Here we are, another episode on the best of the best. Therese, who do you have here with you today?
I have John Clidy here, who I've known for many years, and I'm really excited to have him on because this is called the best of the best, and he is one of the best of the best. So we get to hear a little bit about his career, his previous life, what he's doing now, and just the climb, the success that he has been so impressive. So John, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate being here. This is exciting.
It is exciting. It is. So why don't we start off just a little bit with, give a little background on who you are, how you got into the real estate business. And I brought your book because I want to tell everybody about your book so that they can hear about it. I think that's really impressive. So tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, you had it upside down. So
I know, I saw.
There you go. All right. Now I can talk. Yeah, there you go. I mean, listen, I was just preparing for Quantum Leap. My daughters are going there for Gary's full day event. So I plan on speaking to instructors, and I was looking through my PowerPoints of my journey. So I kind of have it fresh in my mind of the book part of it. But I mean, to make it simplistic, I think it's just one of those things where you start off your life as any kid. You're like, what am I going to do when I grow up? And, I remember there was this sign that said $50,000 annual salary. And I'm like, I'm in. I don't even know if I knew what it was or what it encountered or what I would have been doing. But, it said physically fit, the best of the best, kind of what you just said, about your podcast, the best of the best. And I was like, all right, that's me. I got this, and I became a state trooper not too long thereafter. I went through the whole 6 months living in Seagirt, New Jersey, and you came home on the weekends and you were back there, 4 a.m. and stayed there till almost 7, 8 o'clock at night on Friday. And when you start that journey, you kind of think you're doing this for forever, right? You're like, I'm gonna do this for 25 years and then I'm going to retire and be a multi-millionaire and I'm going to just sit in the tropics and enjoy life. And I think as I started watching other people retire, I was like, I don't know if that really happens, whether it be divorce or whether it be not enough money, whatever the case may be. I started to see that the dream that I pictured or heard of prior was maybe not the true story. And I started to, at the same time, I guess, tinkle with, I guess you would say, real estate. And like everybody, you have your story of why. Mine was just I bought a house, felt like the guy didn't tell me a lot of information. I went and got my license to kind of all right, what happened here? Why did I feel like I got taken advantage of? And from there, I kind of, like everybody, you do 1 or 2 deals a year, if that. I think my first year I maybe did 1, second year 2. And then I think it was the third year, I think this was 2000. And my broker at the time was independent broker, small independent broker, had all this cash on the table, a lot of money. And I'm thinking the guy's a drug dealer, and I said, what the heck are you doing? I'm a cop, at this time, a state trooper. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm a landlord. I'm like, really? Landlord. Okay. Tell me more. And he was telling me that he owned 30 properties outright and he collects every month. And, he had cash, checks, everything on this table. And I was just impressed. So I kind of started to really dive into what that looked like. I didn't have any money. That was the bigger problem. So I remember purchasing a little, I call it the big 3, but one of the first of the big 3 was a little 3-bedroom, $30,000 row home in Sicklerville, New Jersey. And that, I think that kind of catapulted me to really getting to the point where buying these investment properties and eventually being a realtor for investors. Slowly I kind of transitioned from this great job and everything else I had to like, okay, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life, being a state trooper, or am I starting to fall in love with this other aspect of life? And the book really tells that whole journey. I kind of just summarize it a little quickly, but it just tells that mental journey. And then like, I went from that little small independent to Century 21, and then kind of got that itch, probably just like you, Therese, at one point where you're like this mega agent and like you get bored and want to take on some more stuff. Why not? Right.
Exactly.
And, that's kind of what happened. I was like, I raised my hand and I said, yeah, I think I could do this thing, lucky for me, I went from my team of 6 to like now over 500 some agents, 10 years later. And then that catapulted, the success of that one market center catapulted the regional role and MAPS coach and division leader and area director and regional director and now VP of growth. And that's not in the book because the book's probably, It was pre-COVID. I finished it right around COVID, actually, probably, what was it, 19?
Yeah.
2019 or something like that. I think I finished it. So it's...
You don't have to write a new book.
I started writing a book. I have about 30 pages and I know what they say about like a writer's cramp. I was like writing and I'm like, pretty much what my wife told me when I started writing, leaving Six Figures, I started writing 7 years before I actually released it.
Okay.
And my wife said to me after she read like, 100 pages or something, she's like, this is not good. She's like, you don't have enough story. It's nothing good. You didn't do anything, whatever. Because I was thinking about leaving. So I was talking about thinking about leaving.
Okay.
And kind of at the same time, when I left, it was like the same time as I was writing ideas. And she's like, you need more to the story. So I kind of had like 100 pages. And then I filled in the blank. Once I joined Keller Williams, I think that 5 or 6 year journey like catapulted, from like the being the agent to being a leader. And then it took off. And then I had some substance to the story. And then my investment portfolio took off, as well as the real estate in itself, like right after that 2011 period, when the market crashed and then we started coming back up, I was like kind of right, perfect timing to like gambling in real estate, because then it did what it did, and then obviously we had a little dip in COVID and then it went back up again. So, I think it was one of those things where, you always seek happiness, even if, you think that being a state trooper is the best thing ever. And you grew up thinking that you don't leave these jobs. You just, you hang in there and you get your pension and you get your health benefits and then you do what you want to do. Right. And I was just like, I'm not going to waste any more time. And at the time it was probably 5 years left to be 20 years. I could have did 25 with benefits, but I knew I was never going past 20. So I think the journey for me was like, I got this pension sitting there looking at me 3 years from the time, like really 4 years. And then I think I had like a year of like talking to everybody, mentors, family, wife, everyone. And then I think I knew like probably 3 months before I actually left, was a process in itself, because no one ever left the state police. So it was like no one ever resigned without like being fired or, something happened, right? They were killed, they were, incarcerated, whatever, something happened. They never had someone just went in there and said, all right, I'm done. See you later.
They're probably like, what the heck?
Yeah. And they all tried to say, you got 3 years left. Like 1 year is going to be like for free, because you're going to have like the terminal leave and all that. So you really have like 1 year left. And then, you're going to start planning your year. And then you got a whole terminal leave of 6-7 months there. And I was just thinking to myself, I started doing math. I was like, yeah, but it's 3 years, and then I started like, what could I make in 3 years? What could I do? And started this concept of minus 40 hours. What can I do if I got 40 or 50 hours back and all that? And that was the journey. And I think that's the part, the wisdom that I hope that people get from it is, if I could do that, still be a successful agent, still earn a good dual career income. I was making like 120 some thousand as a trooper with benefits, and probably making another 300 or 400,000 as a agent slash investor, with the money coming in and flipping some homes, and some years maybe a little bit more depending on what I flipped, and my rental income coming in and all that stuff. And and then it started to be kind of like a math equation. If you think about like everything, when you think about life, it's math. And I was like, you know what, I can leave this job, and I think not only do I think I'll be all right, I probably will thrive. And that's where I think the best thing for me was experiencing that, because I think now when I'm hearing that people have read the book, they all say like it changed their lives. And it might not be their lives, but it was their spouses' lives. Mm-hmm. It was their parents, their friends. Because you got people out there. I think Wendy Papasan. I was at an event she was speaking at a week ago, and she said I forgot the publication, but 70% of Americans are unhappy with what they do.
Yeah.
70%.
It's terrible, isn't it?
I mean, just imagine that. Like, so really. For me, you and I, right? We own offices. 70% of those agents probably are not happy, right?
Right.
They're probably not making enough money. And they could be happy with our job, but not the other job, or vice versa. But in some form or fashion, that's a statistic that I think is fairly accurate.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. Do you think that being in the state police position, going through all of that, you had the ability to overcome the fear of staying in that position and taking this leap of faith? So I think you set up a really nice groundwork for people who are living in that fear, and they're like, gosh, I don't know if I can. And now they see that, hey, I can. He did it, and I know I can do it. But what do you think it took for you? What was it about your personality, your background, just your inside spirit that gave you the wherewithal, or the thought process, or the okay to let yourself do this? Because I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people. It's the fear that they face of like, what if?
Yeah. That's a good question. I would say that, my dad, it's not a secret in the story. He was incarcerated and, had a 7th grade education, and always was a hard worker. And that part, I mean, he turned his life around, became an incredible dad and human being, and raised two really successful children. My brother does really well today, and I turned out okay as well. And
yes.
And I don't think that watching. Well, number one, what I learned from him was I didn't want to do what he did, because he was entrepreneur, and I think I read it or heard it on a podcast, but my dad was that guy that worked his tail off all day, put the icy hot on his body for his pain, because he was a roofer, and did the scotch, knocked himself out, had dinner, knocked himself out, and went back to work the next day, 5 a.m, and did it repeatedly until he physically couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so, I learned that what I didn't want. Obviously, we grew up, very humble. Early on, I remember, everybody having all the cool stuff, and I had to make the stuff I had look cool. You know what I mean? Like I made like the Bobos, in my mind, they look cool, even though everyone else was making fun of me. And then he started actually getting some success. I think it was a shame, because if he had a better education, he could have tenfolded, because he was such a good person.
Yep.
And was great with people, but wasn't great understanding how to compound it and make it into more of a business. He was the true realtor, self-employed, he ripped his finger off. He was on a ladder and his finger stayed, and he was out of work for a year or so. We were out of work for a year, so it's one of those things where like you don't work, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So I learned all that from watching him, and I was never scared to work. Like my kids, I don't think they take after their dad or their grandfather, but I wanted to work. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted all that. So I grew up like that. And the state police, I think, refined discipline in me that I probably didn't have, and refined structure and chain of command, which I'm still pretty chain of command like a human being. Where like, if you tell me what to do, I'll do it kind of guy.
Yeah.
But I also like to do my own thing. And I've learned that from my entrepreneurial piece where, and I think as I climb the leadership ladder, the more I'm feeling comfortable to really make those high level decisions. And then you start seeing leaders, the higher leaders to you, and you're like, I can do that. Like every phase, you're like, oh, I can do that. Like even now, I'm next. My top of the sphere is the CEO, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I watch him, and I'm with him every day. Pretty much, whether it's a conversation, Zoom, or I'm flying out to Austin now. So you see that, and you're like, oh wow, like I'm here, like like it's here, like you're like right there, and you see, what goes on, and you're in the conversations, and you watch the, how people, the mannerisms of handling good things, bad things, and all that stuff. So, it's just a different level of, like Gary taught us all, like the only difference between his role and the role, you name it, right, is just the amount of people waiting to talk to me.
That's right.
We all have a role, like, OP, you definitely have a lot more people maybe than the team leader, and then the RD maybe a lot, a little bit more than the OP, and then the division leader a little bit more, and the VP of growth a little much more, and the CEO a little bit more. Even though we get the same volume of problems, it's a different amount of stress at that level because everything rises and falls on you.
That's right.
Just like the OP, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a self-employed person, everything rises and falls on you. Everything.
Exactly.
So I would say that my upbringing definitely helped me through perseverance, work ethic, and then I think the state police refined in me to. And no, really, if you think about both jobs, my dad's world showed me what I didn't want, and the state police world showed me what I didn't want, because you got guys with 3 years on telling me that they're 23 years and 5 months away from retirement. I'm like, dang, you just started, like, and you're already talking about retirement? Like, wow. So, that part is, that was sad. I would say, like, and then I started to think, like, am I going to be that guy or that retired guy that's, sitting there counting every day before he leaves, like 3 years, 6 days and 54 hours. And they got the like people have for Christmas, they have for the retirement. And I'm like, so I'm waiting for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another thing. I think we learn what we don't want in life.
Yes.
As well.
I think one of the things too that you can give yourself a lot of credit for is you took the time to look around. Like you just didn't get involved in the day to day and go through your days. You were researching. Back then, you were watching like the other guys, the ones that were coming up on retirement, finding out information and seeing that maybe they weren't as fulfilled as you were hoping you would be, which led you to start looking at different options. And I think real estate is such an unbelievable field for so many people. And there's a lot of people that don't even give it a thought. But if you can be disciplined and you can take that risk, there's an unlimited opportunity in real estate. And it's not just because you can make a lot of money selling real estate. It's because there's a lot of leadership that's needed in our business, especially right now with all the changes coming and everything that's happening. We need leaders. And there's a lot of them out there in other occupations that are really just feeling beat up. Especially I look at nurses and especially police officers. It's been a tough run for them for the last, 5, 6, 8 years. And, when's enough? And they have to know there are other options and opportunities. And I think that's something that you pioneered to give people hope, to realize that they don't have to stick with that. They do have other opportunities. It's just, are they willing to take the risk?
Yeah, you get really proud of yourself not when I did it, but when I hear other people telling me, thank you. Like I thought my decision was hard, but you did 17 years and you had 3 years from a pension. I only had 7 years in,
right?
And I didn't have that much vested or whatever. And it doesn't have to be a job. I mean, there's some people like struggling to leave a marriage, but they don't have the money.
Right.
It's the same concept, right? Like, you're going to have fear of, can I make it on my own without this person? Can I get the reserves? All that stuff's going to go through your mind, just like it does for us leaving a job, right? It's the same concept. So I'm proud of that, where people come and say, hey, this helped me out of this situation, or it helped me out of that, because that's what the intention of the book was, is like to help some, you I don't know if you know this, but you don't make money off books. You do it to spark conversation. You do it that it's a gift for someone. It's a way, I guess you could say it's a way of maybe some clout, if you're at an event or something, and you could say, you're an author or something like that. But outside of that, you use the book for what my intention was, is legacy.
Yes.
I shared the story that I was at like some, the GoBundance guys, they have the GoBundance thing.
Yep.
And I was at their mastermind event, and it was like a campfire, and one of the guys were talking about legacy, and he was like, we asked a question where it was, do you know your parents' name?
Huh.
And I sat there and I was like, I don't. And I was thinking like, wow, so there's one generation away from not knowing my name.
Right. Oh, that's a punch in the gut.
You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, like that's deep. Like, and then like I watched like Michael Jordan, like the other day I was watching him, and it was like the Michael Jordan, hospital for this, and the Michael Jordan library and all that. I'm like, that guy's leaving a legacy. And like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing to change the game for my family and things of that nature? Because that's how you're remembered, right? You're remembered through your stories and what your children tell about you.
That's right.
So to me, that's even a bigger purpose of why we do what we do. The money is one thing, but if you're changing a bunch of lives, internally, externally, or whatever, eventually you start seeing it and hearing it, in your travels of like, hey, thank you, I appreciate you. Or you'll see like a building go up with your name, or you'll see a library, or you'll see a whole concept or a system made after what you've created.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's what I think the bigger purpose of leaders are, us, you, me, all the people that came before us, is that, how do we make a difference in people's lives?
Yeah. And I think Mike McCarthy was doing a session, and he asked us, it was very interesting. We were on a boat, and he said, okay, everybody knows what their 1, 3, 5, 10-year goal is. He goes, I want you to write what your 100-year goal is. And I'm like, 100? I'm going to be 150. I'm not going to be here. And he's like, yeah, exactly. But will people remember who you were? And I was like, oh, that's a really great exercise to sit and do and figure out, are you doing things that will leave a legacy? Is that important to you? I guess, first of all. But I also think I'm going to kind of rewind back to something you said very early on about investing. And maybe, people are listening and they're thinking, they're not happy where they are and they don't know how to start. But, even starting with just a small investment property, give them something to get a flavor for real estate, have that opportunity to have an investment property, because real estate does go up in value. So it's a really great, safe investment. It might be a good stepping stone for someone to get into our business and start feeling what it's like to decide if they want to know more.
Yeah, I will tell you that if I always see those things, if you can go back and tell your future self, your past self, like advice, the first advice would be is to know your expenses. And that, I didn't know that. I think I probably didn't know that until late 30s. And I'm 52, of like truly how much it costs me to live the life I live. Mm-hmm. So I would highly recommend everybody, no matter what part you are, if you haven't done it, like just see what it costs for you to live your life. And that's, if you're married with children, that's them, that's your significant other, that's everybody that spends the money that you own or have access to. And then obviously, in order to invest, you need to have the excess, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you invest in. So I did it opposite. I invested probably with money I didn't have, right? I had to borrow money from my dad and all that. But again, like anything, real estate, I do agree with you, is one of the best investments you can do. So having that investment, eventually you hold on to it long enough, it goes up in value, right? You have equity, you can refinance it, you can get a line of credit off of it, you can rent it. There's so many things you can. It could be a college, I always said college fund for one of my daughters or whatever. So, and then if you got big buildings like we own, I own some bigger ones that really go up in value, and they really leave a lot of passive income stream, especially, annually. It's impressive, some of these buildings. So, and it started with that, like I said, that one $30,000 investment. And then it turned into another $30,000. And then it turned into one that we ended up flipping, the third one of the big three was a flip. So then I went from really using banks' money to having a little money myself for the first time, because I flipped that house, the third house, and had some cash. And then, eventually I did another one. And then all of a sudden I go from using mortgages to now using my own cash and using some mortgages and equity. And then, you just start getting more resourceful and more smarter about your investments. And, what will I do cash? What will I use for a mortgage? And then you start wealth building. Now you're starting to be, when we talk about the cash flow quadrant, you go from employee, self-employed to an actual business owner, and then the investor. And that investor is where you really clean up on, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned this, I learned this lesson from Keller Williams without learning it, Therese, is I thought to myself, and this is just recent, like last couple of years, I was like, so let me get this straight. I'll be the OP, right? Operating principal. And then there's an investor, and we can have the same equity, and the OP does all the work and the investor does none of that and gets the same amount of money if they have the same interest and equity. And I'm like, wow.
Right. I want that one.
I'm like then I was like, I want to be the OP, right? Now I'm like, I want to be the investor.
Yeah.
Like I want what my investors have. So, I mean, it's funny as you evolve, your mindset evolves. You're like, from like 10, 15, 12 years later, whatever, you're like, I like that investor one.
Yes.
Same, I get the same return and I don't really have to do anything. I like that.
It's like, sign me up.
Yes.
I love it. Well, John, this has been a real pleasure. Is there any last parting words you'd like to send out there?
My parting word is that the one thing I didn't do really well is I didn't buy into mentorship and coaching early in life. I would say take advantage of, there's a lot of people out there that are willing to give you information. People that you verified it or right for giving, the information. Take advantage of it. They failed and they've said successes. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Listen to some of those folks that have done it and take some lessons from them. Because I didn't learn that lesson until, again, later in life. I think I was stubborn around that. I wanted to do everything on my own and without really reading books and getting the knowledge. So I would say slow down and maybe see who's done it before you and read up on it and get some information and listen to podcasts. You might speed up your journey a whole lot faster than I did. That would be my advice. That's
great advice. Great. There have been people before us always. So John, I want to say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'm so proud and excited for you. It's just fun to watch all you're doing and all your success. And I hope it just keeps on going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, John. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.